Hello there, and welcome to the debut episode of Murder Most British. I'm Zach, your American co-host, and I'm still baffled by why you Brits call a sandwich a buddy.
I'm not sure every Brit calls it a butty, but I think it's definitely a Southern England thing. I'm Rachel, the Brit, guiding Zach through our accents and my Marmite obsession.
Well, I remember when you gave me Twiglets, and that was gross.
Wow, you like pretzels, so it's a cross between something you like and something I like. Thought you might
Blech.
give it a go. Anyway,
Yuck. Well, we're diving into the UK's darkest crimes. Today we start with the White House Farm murders, a case that's haunted the UK for 40 years. Was it a psychotic break by a troubled sister, or a cold-blooded plot by her brother for a £436,000 inheritance?
in August of 1985 in Essex, a family of five shot dead in one night. First, it looked like a murder-suicide. But a shocking confession flipped the case. Pointing to Jeremy Bamber, the adopted son, police believed him until they didn't.
This is a story of grief, guilt, and forensic twists that still divide opinions. Let's step back to 1985 and meet the Bamber family. But before that, find us on X at MurderMostBrit or TikTok and Instagram at MurderMostBritish to join the debate.
White House Farm, a large Georgian farmhouse nestled in the quiet village of Tolleshant Darcy, Essex. Rolling fields stretch for miles around. It's the kind of place where the days are measured by seasons, not clocks. At its centre were Neville and June Bamber, both 61 years old in 1985. They were respected pillars of the community. Neville, a towering man of 6'4", had served in the Royal Air Force during the war. Afterward, he transitioned into farming and eventually became a local magistrate. He also ran a caravan site owned by the family. Calm, measured, and practical, he was the kind of man others turned to in a crisis. June was equally devoted to duty, just in a different way. A devout Christian, she served as a church warden, volunteered locally, and ran charity events. But under the serene exterior, there were layers. She had battled depression years earlier, suffering a breakdown in the 1950s that led to hospitalization. Her faith became both her refuge and, at times, a source of tension in the family, especially when it came to her children.
Neville and June couldn't have children naturally, so they adopted. First came Sheila in 1957, just a baby when she joined the Bamber home. From the outside, she had everything: a stable family, a beautiful farmhouse to call home, and every opportunity. But growing up wasn't smooth. She attended a Catholic girls' school and later a secretarial college, but always dreamed bigger. She moved to London in her late teens to pursue a modeling career. Sheila had some success in modeling, though her career was intermittent and marked by long periods of instability. She married Colin Caffell in 1977, and together they had twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas, in 1979. But the marriage didn't last long. They divorced in 1982. Sheila's mental health was deteriorating quickly. She was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1983. After years of battling paranoia, religious delusions, and disturbing hallucinations, she was hospitalized multiple times at St. Andrew's Hospital, where she once told doctors her sons were from the devil. She also believed she herself was evil, claiming she was the devil's child. By 1985, she was a single mother, 28 years old, struggling to keep it together while raising two 6-year-old boys. That August, she brought Daniel and Nicholas to White House Farm to stay with their grandparents. It should have been a quiet countryside retreat, but under the surface, tensions simmered. June's intense prayers and religious rituals reportedly disturbed the twins, who clung to Sheila. Colin Caffell said June would pray so fervently she would fall to her knees, rocking and crying, which frightened the boys.
Then there was Jeremy, born Jeremy Paul Marsham in 1961. He was adopted by the Bambers at 6 weeks old. His biological mother was a 16-year-old vicar's daughter. His biological father was a married army sergeant. The adoption records were sealed, but it's clear Jeremy always knew he was different. He grew up in the shadow of Neville's discipline and June's religious devotion. Unlike Sheila, who bucked expectations by fleeing to London, Jeremy pushed boundaries in quieter, more manipulative ways. He wasn't a high achiever, far from it. He flunked out of Gresham's school without any formal qualifications. Neville, desperate to give him direction, funded trips to Australia and New Zealand, enrolling him in scuba diving courses and trying to ignite some passion. But Jeremy didn't stay on the straight and narrow. While abroad, he allegedly bragged about breaking into a jeweller's shop and even smuggling heroin. Whether these stories were true or just bravado, it painted a picture of a young man living on the edge.
I wish my parents would have sent me to Australia
I mean, what a
and New
life,
Zealand.
everything's handed to him.
That's crazy. Like, here, go do this and go do that. Like, go find yourself.
Mm.
It's like, it kind of reminds me of like gap years. Go have a gap year in Australia, but he's out there allegedly stealing and smuggling heroin. Like,
Well, I'm sure there's better things that he could have been doing out there.
well, it's like go big or go home, because like, holy shit. So, anyways,
Let's get back to the story. What happened?
by 1982, Jeremy was back in Essex. He was living in a cottage owned by the family just a few miles from the farm. He was 24, aimless, increasingly resentful. Working the land for £170 a week wasn't exactly his dream job. He got an 8% stake in the family's caravan business, Osea Road Camp Sites Limited, and Neville even gave him a car. But Jeremy wasn't content. He wanted more. According to those who knew him, Jeremy had a darker side. He could be manipulative, smug, and chillingly detached. Weeks before the murders, he broke into a caravan site office and stole cash, something he only admitted to later after his girlfriend at the time, Julie Mugford, turned on him. The burglary was a red flag, but at the time, it seemed like a petty crime. No one imagined what would come next.
Behind the closed doors of White House Farm, things weren't as picture perfect as they seemed. Neville and June were strict. They didn't exactly embrace Sheila's modelling career or her struggles with mental illness. June reportedly thought Sheila's schizophrenia was more spiritual than medical, something to be prayed away. Her own past struggles with mental health didn't breed empathy, they bred frustration. She was openly critical of Sheila's lifestyle, her divorce, her medication. Jeremy, meanwhile, was viewed as a black sheep. He didn't have Sheila's charm or vulnerability, nor her fragility. He clashed with Neville often. He reportedly resented the fact that Sheila and the twins got more attention and emotional support. And while Sheila's illness was treated with concern, Jeremy's behaviour, reckless, cold, and sometimes bizarre, was often brushed off as immaturity.
Well, yeah, I would think so. Usually, like middle children, or like they just, they're just, immature.
Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like, he was pretty much jealous of the sister. Obviously, she came first and maybe felt like she was receiving more love because she was the first. Who
True.
knows?
It's easy to see how the cracks formed. You had Neville, a man of logic and control, at constant odds with a son who broke the rules. June, whose unbending faith often alienated her children. Sheila, desperately trying to stay afloat mentally, and two little boys caught in the middle. On the outside, they were a wealthy, respectable farming family. On the inside, it was a pressure cooker of fear, resentment, and unmet expectations. Everyone wanted something different: peace, control, freedom, love, but no one seemed to be able to give it. And that summer, in August of 1985, everything was coming to a head.
In just a few days, the entire family would be dead, except for Jeremy. The question of what happened inside this farmhouse, between those walls, would haunt the nation for decades. It started, as so many tragedies do, with tension no one knew how to diffuse. It's the night of August 6th, 1985, a warm, quiet evening in Tolleshant, Darcy, a village that barely makes a blip on the map, just 40 miles northeast of London, but a world away in feel. White House Farm rests on 300 acres of countryside. No neighbours in sight, just trees, barns, fields, and eerie stillness of a family trying awkwardly to coexist. Inside the farmhouse, tensions hang like static. Neville and June Bamber are hosting their grandchildren and Sheila, who arrived a few days earlier. This wasn't meant to be a peaceful holiday. It was more of an obligation. Sheila was unwell, vulnerable, and recently out of psychiatric care. The boys had been staying with their father, Colin Caffell, but Sheila wanted them with her. Neville and June agreed to visit, reluctantly. As the night fell, no one could have guessed it would be their last.
At 3:26 a.m. on August 7th, Chelmsford Police Station receives a call. The man on the line is 24-year-old Jeremy Bamber, speaking from his cottage in Goldhanger, just 3.5 miles down the road. He tells Police Constable Michael West that something's terribly wrong. His father, Neville, had just phoned him in a panic, saying his sister Sheila had gone berserk with a gun. Neville, according to Jeremy, was terrified. Jeremy says he heard shouting, then a gunshot, and then nothing. The line went dead. He tells West he's too scared to drive to the farm alone and pleads for officers to get there quickly. The mention of a gun prompts an immediate firearms response.
But there's something odd from the start. Jeremy tells police that before he rang, he called his girlfriend, Julie Mugford, in London. That call happened around 3 a.m., almost half an hour before he alerted the authorities. To Julie, he reportedly said, "Something's wrong at the farm. I haven't slept all night." He doesn't mention any phone call from his father, no talk of shots fired, just a vague sense that something's off. And then there's more. Jeremy didn't rush to the scene. In fact, he drives slowly, almost too slowly. As police from Whittam Station respond, they overtake him on Page's Lane. His cousin, Anne Eaton, would later say that Jeremy usually drove like a lunatic. So why the hesitation now? Why the calm?
The first officers arrive at White House Farm around 3:48 a.m. They're cautious. With reports of a gunman and an entire family potentially in danger, they don't rush in. This is 1985 rural Essex. There's no tactical unit on standby. Police cordon off the property and wait for the tactical firearms group, which finally shows up around 5 a.m. They try with loudhailer repeatedly. They call Sheila's name. They call for Neville, for June. Nothing. Except the sound of a dog barking inside. No shouting, no crying, just silence, and a German shepherd's lonely howl. It's chilling. No lights are on, no movement. That's weird.
That is weird. Obviously, basically you've been told that someone's gone berserk with a gun and everything is just dead silent. It's strange.
Well, that could be a trap. They're waiting for cops to run in and then they shoot them too, but it's just crazy. Like, how they have to wait so long. But I guess, like you're in the rural area, there's not this kind of situation
Well, yeah,
happens very often.
with being, they could arrive there not noticing anything, and obviously they could even think it's a hoax, that there's actually not actually anything going on, So,
Yeah, but it's also crazy that they have to wait so long. Like people could be injured, dying. It's just not good.
well, back in the 80s, obviously they didn't have what they have now, where they can kind of storm in a lot bit quicker, to be fair. But let's get back to the story. Meanwhile, the phone situation gets weirder. So, a British telecom operator checked the line at 3:56 a.m. It's still open. No voices, just that barking dog. Then again at 4:30 a.m. The line is still open. In fact, police would later say that the phone remained off the hook for hours until they finally entered the house. If Neville had made a desperate call to Jeremy, wouldn't the line have closed? Why no blood or prints on the kitchen phone where Neville supposedly made the final plea? And more importantly, why call Jeremy, not 999? Neville was a magistrate. He knew the procedure. He knew the police line wouldn't get help to him fast enough.
At 7:30 a.m., over 4 hours after Jeremy's call, police finally make entry. They use a window on the ground floor. The front doors are locked. Upstairs, one window in the master bedroom is found open. But that's it. Inside, they step into a nightmare. Neville's body lies in the kitchen, face down in a pool of blood. He's been shot 8 times, 4 into the head and 4 into the body. His injuries suggest a brutal fight. His teeth are broken, his face bruised, possibly from a rifle butt. There's smashed crockery, a flipped chair, and a telephone with a receiver hanging off the hook. It looks like he's fought back pretty hard.
Wow. You can just imagine the scene.
Well, a strong farmer,
Mm. Well, yeah, he's like
veteran,
6'4", pretty
veteran.
fit for a 61-year-old.
Yeah, he's fighting somebody and he's fought hard, but
June is found upstairs in the master bedroom. She's been shot 7 times: chest, face, hands. A bullet went straight through her palm, suggesting that she raised her hand in defense. A Bible lies beside her, moved, police say, by one of the officers before photographs were taken. That Bible becomes a key point of controversy later.
well, yeah. What kind of police,
Hmm.
in my opinion, moves things?
Well, they shouldn't, should they? I mean, it's pretty standard that you don't touch anything in the scene. So,
Yeah, like I don't like where this is. Let me move it real quick. Like you have to take pictures and make sure that the scene is, photographed as
yeah,
is.
nothing should be moved until the photographs have been taken. So, you would expect that from every crime scene that they arrive at. So, anyway, let's get back to the story. So, nearby is Sheila. She's barefoot, laying on the floor in a blood soaked nightgown, a semi automatic 22 Anschutz. Sorry, my pronunciation there. A 22 Anschutz rifle rests against her chest, her left hand near the trigger. She has 2 gunshot wounds to the neck, one of which severs her jugular vein. There's blood on the walls, the carpet, the bed, no signs of a silencer. At first glance, it looks like she did it, killed her parents, then herself. But the tragedy doesn't end there.
In a second upstairs bedroom, Daniel and Nicholas, the 6-year-old twins, are still in their beds wearing pajamas. Daniel has been shot 5 times in the head. Nicholas was hit 3 times, twice in the chest, once in the face. It's almost too much to bear. Whoever did this, it wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. 25 rounds were fired that night. The rifle holds 10 at a time. That means the killer had to reload at least twice. Police initially treat it as a murder-suicide. Sheila, the mentally ill daughter, is assumed to have snapped. She had a documented history of schizophrenia. She once said she wanted to kill the children and kill herself. It made sense on paper, but as more eyes fell on the case, the doubts started to pile up.
Well, let's start with the rifle. Jeremy told police that he'd left it loaded on the kitchen table the night before, claiming he'd heard rabbits outside and thought it might come in handy. But the story changes. In a later statement, he says that he and Sheila had gone target shooting before the murders. Then, under pressure, he admits that he had never actually seen her shoot as an adult. Sounds suspicious. Sounds like such a fake
Yeah.
alibi type situation here.
Well, when your story changes 3 times,
Yeah,
it's well, what was it? You know,
exactly. I mean, the
like,
truth is the truth. So, you know, you're not gonna, if you're gonna tell the truth, there's only gonna be one story, isn't there?
well, yeah. I mean, like, if you know the truth, you're just gonna say, well, this is what happened,
Mm.
and then that's it. Why does it go? Yeah, well, I loaded it and left it on the table, but then I go, oh, wait a minute, we went out shooting.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I've never actually seen her shoot.
Not
Oh,
as an
you just
adult, so he's only seen her shoot as a child, apparently. But yeah.
well, it just kind of stacks up against you when you just keep coming out with different
Scenarios, basically.
yeah. Say I needed you to keep my train of thought going because it just kind of blanked out. Ugh.
So let's get back to this anyway. There's a phone call. If Neville rang him at 3:15 a.m. and the line was found open at 3:56 a.m. and yet still again at 4:30 a.m., it suggests that the phone was never hung up. But no blood on it, no fingerprints, nothing. And if Neville really made that desperate call, why not call emergency services instead? The doubt starts to erode the murder-suicide narrative.
Well, yeah. I mean, if Neville's getting shot, that's but then
I
he's like
mean, if the
running
line's
running to
open,
the
then
phone.
obviously that you're going to hear these shots on the line. So there was none of that.
Yeah, and if he had been shot and he's usually if you get
Oh,
hurt,
you're going to hear him groan.
but when you get hurt, you're like, oh, and you grab it with your hand,
Mm.
and you're gonna get blood on it,
Yeah, exactly.
and then you're just gonna start getting blood everywhere, especially getting shot. So if he went to the phone and picked it up, it would have blood on it.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't be clean, not unless someone cleaned it.
True. Or it was knocked over in the fight.
Yeah, and nobody actually touched the phone. But then if there was no prints on it, surely there would have been prints from him making the phone call.
True.
So it just points to somebody wiping the phone of any prints.
Or he never even picked it up to use it to call anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just open. Like it just fell off. Like in the struggle, it fell off.
But then who would have made the call? Because obviously the call was logged with the police. So
True.
very interesting, guys. Very interesting.
It's just kind of weird.
Hmm.
So okay, outside the farmhouse, Jeremy isn't quite behaving like a man who just lost his entire family. Officers later report him as unusually calm. He's polite, chatty. One officer even says he, quote, wasn't distressed in the way you'd expect. He reportedly joked with police, speculated on whether Sheila had gone mad, and he also accepted tea while waiting. Julie Mugford, his girlfriend, tells investigators that Jeremy had phoned her first at 3 a.m. Not panicking, not in shock, just weird. She says he told her something was wrong at the farm, but didn't mention any call from his father. And later, when he showed up at the crime scene, he never mentioned that Julie had already known something was off.
Hmm. So, you wouldn't behave calm if your whole family had been found dead. I mean, and the police told you, you're not going to be calm and collected and jokey. It just is not a normal way to behave, would it?
But even if you're just like in shock, you'd be very solemn
Yeah,
and
but you
just,
would still have that panic type freaking out sort of behavior.
well, I mean,
Not
well, not everybody's going to just kind of like, it's going to hit people in different ways, I
mm,
think. But like,
yeah.
you just kind of, you just can't believe
Well,
it.
I for one, I would be frantically like screaming, and I just would not be calm. Even in shock, I wouldn't be calm. Um,
Yeah, it's just weird.
yeah. Anyway, it's very suspicious behaviour for the police. I mean, they do look at people's behaviours, don't they? Police begin piecing together inconsistencies. Jeremy's the only surviving heir, with Neville, June, Sheila, and the boys dead. Everything passes to him. That's White House Farm, 300 acres of land, the OC Road caravan business, and a total estimated inheritance of £436,000, which in today's money is just over 1.3 million. Weeks later, police learned that Jeremy had recently asked about how to silence a rifle, that he'd joked about killing his family, that he seemed fixated on money, even asking estate agents to evaluate the property shortly after the funerals. Then the real twist drops.
Oh gosh,
Mm.
that's 436,000 reasons
I mean,
to
that's a lot of
kill.
money in today's money. Right.
Hmm.
But even back
Yeah,
then, 436,000 plus everything else.
yeah.
A
I mean,
lot of motive right there.
that's a, I mean, people have killed for less than that. I mean, obviously,
Exactly.
that's just crazy. So on September 7th, 1985, Julie Mugford walks into the police station and she changes everything. She tells detectives that Jeremy planned the murders, that he'd been talking about it for months. First, he considered sedating the family and setting a fire to the house. Then, he tried to hire a hitman named Matthew McDonald for £2,000. This was someone he'd met during a burglary in New Zealand. That plan failed. He decided to just do it himself. Julie says that on the night of August 6th, Jeremy called her and said, quote, "It's tonight or never." Then, in the early hours of the 7th of August, he called again and simply said, "I did it." Days later, he bragged about his performance at the funeral, saying, quote, "I should have been an actor."
Huh, nice. Um, Police arrested Jeremy the very next day,
Wait,
September.
wait, wait, wait. We're just going to gloss over where you just said, nice.
Should have been an actor. I mean, it didn't sound like he was very
It's
good at
classy.
acting. Do you know what I mean?
It's very classy right
Wow.
there. I mean, like, come on. What the
He
fuck?
didn't sound like a very good actor to me. Anyway, I'm going to tell you. So, police arrested Jeremy the very next day on the September the 8th, 1985. The image of the grieving son collapsed. The case flips from a family tragedy to an alleged cold-blooded mass murder. The prosecution's theory is clear. Jeremy staged the entire scene, used Sheila's illness to frame her, and set himself up as the lone survivor. But the evidence, that's where the real battle begins, because this case, more than most, will come down to what the evidence says and what it doesn't.
That's always what it is. You've got to gather all the evidence, but then we've already heard that the police moved evidence.
Exactly. So then there's, what evidence is actual real evidence? What's
Well, if one piece of evidence is in one place and it's moved, it could change the dynamic of the scene.
Of course.
So,
And then, how can you then class that as evidence of the scene? when they clearly didn't take the photos until after these things had been the Bible had been moved.
Yeah, I wonder what else has been moved or tampered with, or
Exactly.
we're just getting into the bumbling police force again. How it sometimes happens.
I think especially back in the 80s, hopefully they've moved on a lot from there and learnt from stuff like that. But I think back in the 80s, I think, they probably didn't actually fully know what they were doing, to be fair.
Well, after all that insanity that's happened, when Essex police arrested Jeremy Bamber on September 8th, just 1 month after the White House farm killings, it sent shockwaves through the country. The press had, up to that point, clung to the idea that Sheila Caffell, a deeply troubled woman struggling with schizophrenia, had suffered a psychotic break, murdered her family, and taken her own life. That narrative, tragic as it was, had a sort of grim logic to it. But now the story was shifting. Police were alleging that the only surviving son, handsome, charming, well spoken Jeremy, had staged the whole thing. The public wasn't ready for it. And in truth, neither were the courts. Not yet.
Just 48 hours after his arrest, Jeremy was released without charge. There simply wasn't enough evidence. Julie Mugford's statement, explosive as it was, it needed corroboration. In the absence of hard forensic proof, Jeremy was free to walk out of the station and back into public life. But the police weren't done, not by a long shot. Behind the scenes, a small team of detectives was growing increasingly suspicious. Their doubts had started quietly, a smudged fingerprint here, a strange phone record there. Now, with Julie's testimony added to the mix, they were ready to dive deeper, and the cracks in Jeremy's story began to widen.
Yeah, they're just going to give up. Like, oh, yeah, we don't have enough evidence, so sorry, guy.
Well,
Go about your business.
yeah.
It's like, no, they're not done yet. They're going to come back for you.
Well, they've got to keep investigating because they
Well,
need
I
to
mean,
get to the bottom of it.
but it's obvious that it wasn't all wrapped up.
Well, no, obviously there was inconsistencies that fueled suspicion on him. It didn't seem clear cut, dry that it was Sheila. So I think because they couldn't be 100% that it was Sheila, they had to investigate further with Jeremy to see, where that would lead, if
Well,
anywhere.
well, they're redeeming themselves, thankfully, because they were kind of bumbling about. But
Yeah.
thankfully, they kept pursuing it. One of the earliest red flags was the question of the silencer. The murder weapon was a 22 caliber unshot semi-automatic rifle, commonly used for target shooting and vermin control. Initially, the gun was found next to Sheila's body without a silencer attached. That detail was crucial. Why? Because of ballistics and logistics. The rifle, without the silencer, was just short enough for someone to use it in a suicide. But attach the silencer, and suddenly it's far too long. Sheila couldn't have physically pulled the trigger with it in place, not without extreme contortion or assistance. And there's the rub. The gun was stored with its silencer attached. That was the family's habit. And if someone had removed it before the shooting, why would they have done so?
Then came a discovery that upended the timeline. A few days after the murders, Jeremy's cousin, Anne Eaton, and her father went to clean out the farm. In a gun cupboard in the house's annex, they discovered a box containing the rifle's silencer, wrapped in a cloth, smeared with what appeared to be blood, and tucked away. Alarmed, they handed it over to the police. The forensic team tested it. Inside the silencer's baffle was blood, and more importantly, a fragment of Sheila Caffell's brain tissue. That finding shattered the murder-suicide theory. If the silencer had been on the rifle when Sheila was shot, She couldn't have killed herself because the gun was found next to her without the silencer. Someone had to have removed it after shooting her.
I'm sorry. The family came in a few days later to clean up a crime scene. What? That's insane.
Surely a crime scene would be, you know, or the property, at least a week, 2 weeks, after, just in case the police need to go back and do further investigation. Um, this just a couple of days later.
Well, yeah, like, oh well, looks like what it is. It is what it is, and then the bumbling police force again. Like, yeah, go on ahead.
But then that seems funny as well because a few days later they go there to clean out the farm. I mean, this family has just been murdered. Um, you're going in there a couple of days later just to kind of clear it out already. It's a bit soon, in my view.
Yeah, especially if you need to go back and re-examine the crime scene, and then they're handling. I'm guessing handling the silencer that was in the cupboard. Like, what do you? Oh, it's got blood on it. Oh, I better go take this to the police station. Like, well, now they can't even like take a picture of where it was, what state it was in. Now they've got their fingerprints all over it. Like, like, come on.
And why would they even remove it, and take it to the police station? Why don't you just leave it in place, call the police out to come in and photograph it in situ? It all seems weird how they investigate some of these, like back in the early 80s. It just seems a bit careless.
Yeah. Well, this finding put Jeremy back in the crosshairs. According to the new theory, he had used the rifle with the silencer to kill all 5 victims, his parents, sister, and nephews, then removed the silencer, placed the gun near Sheila's body, and staged the scene to resemble a suicide. It wasn't a moment of madness, it was calculated, cruel, and cunning.
Well, anyway, there was the telephone call. So remember when Jeremy claimed that his father had phoned him at around 3:15 a.m.? He said that Sheila had gone berserk with a gun. Tests on the phone in the kitchen, where Neville would have made the call, showed no fingerprints, no blood, nothing. Yet the room was clearly the scene of a brutal fight. Neville had been shot multiple times, his body showing signs of struggle. It was impossible to reconcile such a clean phone with that level of violence.
Well, that is definitely something where you said it was clean.
Yeah, because if he's been, and he's been close to the phone when he's being supposedly battered, beaten, you would expect blood to kind of, splatter out. And even if he didn't touch the phone, um, he could have had a splatter sort of, where he'd been hit, a splatter of blood could have landed on the phone, but there's just absolutely nothing. And if that phone was in the vicinity of his body, you would expect to have some sort of DNA.
But also, like, wouldn't there still be some fingerprints on it?
Well, yeah,
Like,
because
from being used?
surely there would be fingerprints from previous uses of the phone, prior to this actual situation. So it seems if there was not one single fingerprint on this phone, somebody had wiped it.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's going to be everybody's fingerprints.
Even if,
Yeah.
there's a mix of like 5 and they've all been smudged together, that you're going to find some sort of residue. On top of that, telephone records showed the landline at White House Farm remained off the hook for hours after the murders. So if Neville had placed a call, why hadn't he dialed 999? Why call Jeremy, a 24-year-old with no medical training, instead of the emergency services? And why, according to Jeremy, did Neville sound calm enough to relay the situation before he got cut off?
Yeah. I mean, if you're getting shot at or have been shot, I mean, you could also say that being a veteran, he, he kind of kept it together, but you're still going to sound panicked a bit, like, hey man, I've just been shot. Like, but if he's just like, oh, well, she's going crazy, she's grabbed my gun and running around the house, but she hasn't done anything violent yet, he could have been just he could have just been kept keeping it together and be like, okay, cool, I need to handle this situation. Is
If she hadn't have shot anybody or been violent like that in any way, and she was just, you know, running around with a gun in it and threatening, verbally, then maybe he could have then, called Jeremy to come over and try and help to calm her down, maybe, and yeah, it just
hmm.
strange.
Then came the detail that most disturbed the detectives: the positioning of the bodies. Neville was found downstairs in the kitchen. Sheila was upstairs in the bedroom. But based on bullet trajectory, bloodstains, and ballistics, it appeared that Neville was shot upstairs, then staggered downstairs, mortally wounded. He was a tall man, in good health, and would have taken some effort to subdue. The idea that a slender, mentally ill woman like Sheila, who's quote unquote gone berserk, could have overpowered him seemed a bit implausible. Moreover, Sheila's body lacked the telltale signs of someone who had fired a gun multiple times. No gun residue was found on her hands, no fingerprints on the rifle, no evidence she had handled the weapon at all, apart from a single smear of blood on her hand, consistent with someone placing the rifle near her, not using it.
What about Jeremy himself? After his release, he seemed almost emboldened. He returned to the farmhouse, accompanied by estate agents, expressing interest in selling the property. He spoke to the press, appeared relaxed, and reportedly bragged to his friends that he was about to come into some serious money. Then came Julie Mugford's second bombshell. She told police that Jeremy had once confessed that his hatred for his adoptive parents, especially his father, Neville, who he said treated him like dirt. He was angry about money. Neville controlled the family business and paid Jeremy a modest wage. Nothing like the lavish lifestyle that Jeremy wanted. He resented that Sheila, despite her illness, was treated with kid gloves, while he, the normal son, was micromanaged and mistreated. Perhaps most damning of all, Julie had claimed that Jeremy had told her before the murders that he would make it look like someone else did it. Someone mad. When Sheila came to stay at the farm that August, he saw his opportunity.
Yeah, I don't like that when it says the normal son. Man, she didn't ask to have schizophrenia and all that. Like, come on.
Exactly. You know, I think with a condition like that, you do need to be a little bit more. I don't think it's spoiling her or kid gloving her or anything like that. I think it's just having a little bit more of patience and understanding for her behaviours.
Yeah, I mean, like with like mental illness and stuff like that. Obviously, this was 85. It's not like it is now where it's really coming out a lot more, more understanding.
I think people back then, they didn't really, I mean, I was born early 80s, but I think back then they didn't really talk about it as much, did they? Um, I feel like it was kind of like hidden illnesses, mental health.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like mental health. You can't see it. I mean, obviously with schizophrenia, they could see things or they can hear voices, and it could come out more. But like depression and stuff like that, you can see the signs, but it's not like you've lost your arm. Can't see it.
Yeah, I think just looking at what their treatment options would have been for like schizophrenia back in the 80s compared to now, it just seems like there wouldn't have been a lot of help.
Yeah, kind of like just putting him in an asylum
Yeah.
if they got too bad and stuff like it, which is heartbreaking. Julie also described how in the weeks leading up to the killings, Jeremy had been obsessed with inheritance law. He asked about what would happen if both parents died and his sister had died as well. Would the estate go to him? Could he sell the farm? Would he inherit the caravan park? It painted a picture not of a grieving brother and son, but of a cold strategist. But of course, the defense had a different view. They argued that Julie was an unreliable witness, motivated by jealousy and revenge. Just days before she gave her statement, she and Jeremy had argued bitterly. He had told her he wanted to see other people. She was furious. She'd lost her lover, and now she was trying to destroy him.
Well, the public was divided. Some believed Julie, others clung to the original story that Sheila had cracked under pressure, triggered by her illness, and carried out a massacre before turning the gun on herself. It was a tragic, yes, but easier to accept than the alternative. Jeremy's own behaviour didn't help. He appeared in press photos smiling. He flirted with other women at the funeral. He cracked jokes at the wake. None of it proved guilt, but it did unnerve people. How could someone who just lost his entire family behave so casually? Then in December of 1985, the tide turned again.
Essex police rearrested Jeremy and formally charged him with 5 counts of murder. This time, they were confident. They had Julie's testimony, the forensic reports on the silencer, and enough circumstantial evidence to convince the Crown Prosecution Service to proceed. The case would head to trial at Chelmsford Crown Court, but not immediately. In the months that followed, both prosecution and defense teams began preparing for a high-stakes battle, one that would pit family loyalty against greed, mental illness against malice, and truth against a carefully constructed lie.
By the time the trial opened in October 1986, interest in the case had reached fever pitch. The press dubbed it the White House Farm Murders. Courtrooms were packed, reporters jostled for seats, and at the centre of it all was Jeremy Bamber, accused of slaying his adoptive parents, sister, and nephews in cold blood, all for the promise of inheritance. The prosecution, led by Brian Levison, QC, laid out their theory. Jeremy, fueled by resentment and greed, had used his intimate knowledge of the house and family routines to plan the perfect crime. He waited until nightfall, travelled to the farmhouse by bicycle so as to not alert suspicion, let himself in, killed them all, then cycled home, cleaned himself up, called Julie, and staged a panicked call to the police.
They emphasized the evidence, the silencer with Sheila's blood and brain tissue, the lack of residue in her hands, the absence of fingerprints on the rifle. They scrutinized Jeremy's alibi, his delay in calling the police, and his bizarre behavior in the aftermath. They played recordings of Julie's statements and introduced diary entries she had kept, notes of Jeremy's comments about, quote, doing it, and, quote, becoming rich. The defense, led by Jeffrey Rivlin QC, hit back hard. They attacked Julie's credibility, painting her as a jilted ex who wanted revenge. They pointed out inconsistencies in her statements. She had, after all, waited a full month before coming forward. They argued that forensic evidence was inconclusive. That Sheila could have wiped the rifle clean, that trace of residue might have dissipated.
But what the defence struggled to overcome was motive. They tried to present Jeremy as a misunderstood son, someone who felt trapped in his parents' shadow. But the prosecution had a simple, devastating narrative. Jeremy Bamber wanted money. He wanted freedom, and he was willing to kill his entire family to get it. As the trial progressed, it became clear that the jury was being asked to choose between two competing stories. There's a schizophrenic mother who inexplicably murdered her family, or a calculating son who exploited her illness to cover his own tracks?
Well, I would say this. Thinking about like how someone's gunning someone to like if she's gone berserk and gone just absolutely crazy, and just shooting everyone, I'm thinking about how she would just be blasting,
Mm.
and and all the victims. It was body and head, body and head, body and head.
Proper targeted shots by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like that movie Collateral with Tom Cruise, because he was a hitman, and he'd go pop pop in the chest and pop in the head. It's double tap to the chest and a tap to the head, because they're gonna be gone. They're dead.
It sounds very calculated. So if she was in a berserk state, or if anybody was in a berserk state, you would expect that there would be shots fired in all random places, not just specific parts of their bodies.
Yeah, like just a cool, clean pop, 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 pop.
Almost like an execution, really. These seems to be.
To me, that doesn't sound like someone who's just firing
Willy-nilly.
just in a berserk state. So
Yeah, I agree.
But anyways, it wasn't an easy decision. There were moments in the trial that cast doubt in both directions. On October 28th, 1986, after 3 weeks of testimony and 5 days of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty on all 5 counts. Jeremy Bamber was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he never ever be released. He stood in the dock expressionless. He didn't cry. He didn't protest. He simply stared ahead as the judge told him he had, quote, never shown a shred of remorse. Over the next 4 decades, Jeremy Bamber became one of Britain's most persistent appellants. From behind bars, he wrote letters, filed motions, hired private investigators, and built an online campaign. He maintained that he was the victim of a vast miscarriage of justice, that evidence had been planted, misrepresented, and suppressed. One of the first appeals came in 1989 and was dismissed. Then, in 2002, the case returned to court, largely centered around new forensic evidence, interpretations, and alleged procedural errors in the handling of evidence.
Bamber's defence argued that crucial photos had gone missing, including those that might have shown the position of the silencer or Sheila's body more clearly. They claimed that the police had altered or failed to disclose important information, including logs from the first officers out on the scene. But the judges weren't persuaded. The Court of Appeal upheld the conviction, stating that the new evidence didn't undermine the strength of the original case.
In 2012, Jeremy Bamber took his case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the body responsible for investigating potential miscarriages of justice in the UK. Over the years, the CCRC has reopened and rejected the case multiple times. Bamber's legal team argued that phone records, blood spatter evidence, and ballistics were either misinterpreted or ignored. But the commission repeatedly concluded that there was insufficient evidence to merit referral. Their stance was clear. While questions remained, none of the doubts raised undermined the jury's original verdict beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, as of today, guys, Jeremy Bamber remains incarcerated at HMP Wakefield, the same high security prison that once held Harold Shipman and Ian Huntley, if you know who they are. He has never admitted guilt, never offered remorse. On his campaign website, he even describes himself as the victim of a stitch-up and continues to insist that police framed him by manipulating Sheila's mental health and planting evidence. His story has attracted supporters and skeptics in equal measure. Over the years, journalists, documentary filmmakers, and even lawyers have picked up on the details, questioning the reliability of the silencer evidence, the timing of phone calls, and the psychological profile of Sheila.
In 2020, the story returned to the public eye in the ITV dramatization White House Farm, starring Freddie Fox as Jeremy Bamber. It reignited debate about the case, especially around how mental illness was portrayed and whether the dramatization oversimplified complex forensic details. Bamber's legal team protested the series, calling it a distortion of the facts. For many viewers, it was the first time they heard the full story. For others, it reopened long standing questions. Could a son really have killed his family for money? Could a deeply unwell woman really have done something so calculated? Was justice even served, truly?
It's difficult, even now, to look at this case without feeling the weight of ambiguity. The evidence points in many directions, but most roads still lead back to Jeremy. Yet what keeps this case alive is the same thing that made it so compelling in 1985. The silence inside that house, no witnesses, no video, just the aftermath and a series of chilling phone calls, blood trails, and conflicting testimony. We're left in many ways where we begin, asking not only who pulled the trigger, but what darkness drives someone to do the unthinkable.
Jeremy Bamber has now spent more years in prison than he spent as a free man. He's exhausted almost every legal avenue. His campaign continues online, with supporters calling for a fresh inquiry, claiming modern forensics could offer answers. But with each rejected appeal, each door that's closed, the verdict hardens into permanence. Officially, Jeremy Bamber is one of Britain's most notorious family murderers. And unless new evidence comes to light, undeniable, objective, and extraordinary, that's how history will remember him. The murders at White House Farm didn't just shatter a family. They fractured public trust and the idea of familial safety. It also was a case that peeled back the illusion of the idyllic English countryside, revealing something darker beneath the surface. A quiet farmhouse, a gentle summer night, and inside, unimaginable horror. Even now, it haunts us, but not only because of the violence, but because of the question it refuses to answer neatly.
At its heart, this case isn't just about Jeremy Bamber or Sheila Caffell. It's about how justice is constructed through memory, testimony, fragments of evidence, and the deeply human need to make sense of chaos. 5 people died that night, including 2 6-year-old boys. Lives had barely begun. And we can't forget that. We also can't ignore how mental illness shaped public perception of this case. Sheila wasn't just a victim, she was, for a time, considered the perpetrator. That shift in narrative from scapegoat to casualty speaks volumes about the stigma that surrounds psychiatric illness to this day.
And then there's Jeremy, a man who was adopted by 2 loving parents, who was given comfort, education, opportunity, and if the jury was right, into the bottomless well of entitlement and ambition. Did he commit these murders to claim an inheritance? Or has he spent nearly 40 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit? You might find yourself believing in his guilt, or you might not. What's undeniable is this. Once a case passes into history, it takes on a life of its own. Every photograph, every court transcript, every shaky alibi becomes a building block in a story we think we know.
But knowing and understanding are not the same. That's what true crime teaches us if we're listening closely. Not to solve every mystery, but to hold space for the complexity, the grief, the echoes of trauma that ripple outward for decades. The White House Farm murders left a permanent mark on British criminal history.
Well, we'll leave you there for now, but this is just the beginning of our journey. Every episode of Murder Most British explores another chapter in the dark history of crime across the UK. Cases that are chilling, controversial, or strangely forgotten. If you found this episode compelling, we'd love if you left a review. Give us 5 stars.
Subscribe.
um, Yeah, subscribe, share it with a friend. It helps more than you know.
You can also follow us on social media at Murder Most British.
Oh, and the Twitter is Murder Most Brit.
Yeah.
Because they only allow a few characters, or 15 characters or less. I'm like, oh wow.
But Instagram, etc., that is, you will find us at Murder Most British, where we'll be posting case files, photographs, behind the scenes research notes from today's episode. And if you've got a theory about Jeremy Bamber or any other case that you would like us to cover, drop us a message. We look forward to reading them.
So, until next time, stay safe and stay curious.